It's the morning of June 20th, 1815. London is anxious. For days, rumors have been swirling through coffee houses, counting rooms, and the corridors of Parliament. Somewhere in Belgium, Napoleon Bonaparte, the most dangerous man alive, is locked in a final, desperate battle against the British-led coalition. Nobody knows the result. The newspapers are silent. The government has heard nothing. Even the generals are waiting. But on the floor of the London Stock Exchange, one man already knows. He's not a soldier, not a spy, not a minister of the crown. He's a banker, and in the next few hours, he's about to make one of the most audacious financial moves in history. Whether it happened exactly the way the legend tells it is another question entirely. The world before the telegraph. To understand what Nathan Rothschild allegedly did, you first need to understand the world he was operating in. The early 19th century was a world without instant communication. No telegraph, no telephone, no Reuters wire service. If something happened in Brussels and you needed to know about it in London, you relied on one thing: a human being on a fast horse, boarding a boat across the English Channel and riding hard through the English countryside. Under good conditions, fair weather, no delays, news could cross from the Belgian coast to London in roughly 2 days. Under bad conditions, longer. This created an extraordinary asymmetry. In financial markets, prices respond to expectations about the future. Bond prices, in particular, are incredibly sensitive to political stability. Britain had been at war with Napoleonic France, on and off, for over 2 decades. That war had cost an almost unimaginable sum. Historians estimate Britain spent the equivalent of £831 billion in today's money fighting Napoleon. To fund that war, the British government sold bonds, known as consols, short for consolidated annuities. These were essentially IOAs. The government borrowed money from investors and promised to pay annual interest in return. Their value depended on one thing above all else: would Britain survive? If Napoleon won at Waterloo, British credit could collapse. The bonds could become nearly worthless overnight. If Britain won, the opposite: confidence, stability, rising prices. And so, on that single battlefield in Belgium, the financial fate of the entire London market hung in the balance. The person who learned the result first would hold an almost unfair advantage: the Rothschild machine. This is where Nathan Rothschild enters the picture. Nathan was the third son of Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a Frankfurt coin dealer who had built a small but respected banking business from almost nothing. Meyer was a visionary. He understood that in a fragmented, pre-industrial Europe, the greatest competitive advantage wasn't capital, it was coordination. So he sent each of his 5 sons to a different European financial capital. Amschel stayed in Frankfurt, Solomon went to Vienna, Karl headed to Naples, James established himself in Paris, and Nathan, the most aggressive and commercially gifted of the brothers, went to England. By 1815, Nathan Rothschild was operating out of New Court in the city of London, and he had already made a name for himself. During the Peninsular War, the British government had hired him to secretly transfer gold across Europe to fund Wellington's armies, a logistical feat that was, at the time, considered almost impossible. He pulled it off. But beyond their banking operations, the Rothschilds had built something else: one of the fastest private information networks in Europe. They maintained teams of dedicated couriers. They had their own boats. They cultivated contacts at ports, in government offices, among diplomats and generals. In a world where information moved at the speed of a horse, the Rothschilds moved faster than almost anyone. Historians have confirmed this. Letters within the Rothschild archive show that the family regularly received commercial and political intelligence ahead of official government channels. So when Napoleon marched north in the summer of 1815, and Europe held its breath, the Rothschilds were watching very closely. The battle. June 1815. A ridge called Mont Saint-Jean, south of the village of Waterloo, Belgium. Wellington's Anglo-Allied army, British, Dutch, Belgian, and German troops, holds the high ground. Napoleon's Army of the North advances. What follows is nearly 9 hours of unrelenting slaughter. More than 200,000 men are engaged. By the end of the day, somewhere between 40,000 and 65,000 of them are dead, wounded, or missing. The numbers vary by source and are still debated by historians. Napoleon throws everything he has at Wellington's line: his Imperial Guard, the most elite soldiers powers in Europe, never yet broken in battle, marches forward in the early evening. And they are stopped. Then, from the east, comes the Prussian army under Field Marshal Blücher, crashing into Napoleon's flank. The French army doesn't just lose, it collapses. Men throw down their weapons and run. Napoleon flees the field in his carriage. The most powerful military force in Europe has been broken in a single afternoon. Wellington, surveying the carnage as night falls, says, according to his own later account, "I hope to God I have fought my last battle." But before that news reaches London, someone needs to carry it there. The courier and the legend. Here's where the story gets complicated and fascinating. The famous legend goes like this. A Rothschild agent named Roworth was positioned near the battlefield. As soon as Wellington's victory became clear, he galloped to the coast, crossed the channel in rough weather, reportedly the only civilian willing to make the crossing that night, and delivered the news to Nathan Rothschild in London on the morning of June 19th. The British government's own messenger, Major Henry Percy, didn't arrive until late on June 21st, a full 2 days later, famously carrying Wellington's dispatch and 2 captured French Imperial Eagle standards into a London ballroom, interrupting a party. So, according to the legend, Rothschild had a 2-day head start. What he allegedly did with it is the stuff of financial folklore. He walked onto the floor of the stock exchange and began selling British government bonds. Not quietly, visibly. Now, Nathan Rothschild was one of the most closely watched men in the city of London. Other traders believed, correctly, that he had information networks far superior to their own. So when he started selling, the market took notice. If Rothschild is selling, maybe Britain lost. Panic spread. Other investors began dumping their bonds. Prices fell sharply. And then, as the story goes, Rothschild's agents quietly moved through the market, buying everything back at the depressed prices, accumulating enormous positions in British consols for a fraction of their true value. When the official news arrived 2 days later, the bonds surged, and Rothschild was sitting on a mountain of them. It's a brilliant story, almost too brilliant. What actually happened? Here is where we owe you some honesty. The Rothschild fake sell-off story is almost certainly a myth, or at minimum, a significant exaggeration. Historians who have examined the actual Rothschild archive at the Rothschild Research Forum in London have found no evidence of this elaborate deception. What the records do show is more straightforward, but still impressive. Nathan Rothschild had been buying British government bonds throughout 1814 and 1815, anticipating that the war would end in Britain's favor. This was a calculated macro bet, not a manipulation scheme. The historian Neil Ferguson, who had full access to the Rothschild archive for his 1998 biography of the family, concluded that Nathan did profit significantly from Waterloo, but not through any dramatic manipulation. His couriers almost certainly did bring him news ahead of the government, and he likely used that edge to continue buying at still depressed prices while the market remained uncertain. The dramatic sell to cause panic, then secretly buy story appears to have been popularized and possibly invented by a pamphlet published in 1846, over 30 years after the events, as part of a wave of anti-Rothschild propaganda that swept through Europe in the mid-19th century. It was embellished further over subsequent decades. The real story is less cinematic, but the underlying truth is still remarkable. The Rothschilds built an information advantage so powerful that they could move markets simply by being present on the trading floor. Whether Nathan manipulated the market or not, other traders believed he had information they didn't. That belief alone was a form of power. Part 6. The principle that still runs the world. 200 years later, the core principle of this story is not only alive, it has been industrialized. Modern financial markets are defined by the race for information speed. In 2010, a company called Spread Networks spent $300 million to lay a fiber optic cable in the straightest possible line between Chicago and New York, shaving 3 milliseconds off transmission time, purely so that high-frequency trading firms could execute trades faster than competitors. 3 milliseconds. Firms now co-locate their servers inside stock exchanges to eliminate the microseconds it takes for a signal to travel across a city. Some companies are experimenting with microwave towers and even laser beams through the atmosphere to transmit trading signals faster than fiber can carry them. The weapons have changed completely, but the war is the same one Nathan Rothschild was fighting in 1815. Get the information first. Move before the market catches up. The Rothschild couriers cross the channel in stormy weather. Today, algorithms execute the same logic in nanoseconds. On June 18, 1815, a battle in a muddy Belgian field changed the course of history. Napoleon's empire ended. Britain emerged as the world's dominant power, and somewhere in London, a banker almost certainly profited through foresight, through preparation and through an information network years ahead of its time. The legend of the Waterloo trade may be more myth than fact, but it endures because it captures something true about how the world works. In finance, in business, in almost every domain of human competition, the person with better information and the nerve to act on it wins. That was true in 1815. It's true right now.